My name is Kevin Marini, and I'm here to talk about composting. I'm an obsessed composter, and I've been teaching about it for over 20 years. I even have a phone line that's called the Rotline, and I've been answering composting questions for 20 years as well. Now, there's many different ways to do composting, from backyard compost piles to worm composting to bokashi to some of the new high-tech systems on the market. I'm going to quickly talk about backyard composting and how to be successful. First thing is to make sure you have a mix of ingredients that is proper for fast composting and creating heat. That means you need brown material and green material. And that doesn't have to do with the color of the material, it has to do with its moisture content and nitrogen content. So fresh materials are green materials, things that still have a lot of moisture and nitrogen in them. And your dried out brown materials are dead materials that have very little moisture. Getting started with the backyard compost pile is relatively simple because guess what? You probably have the materials sitting around, right? You probably have grass that needs mowing, so you have grass clippings. You probably have some fruit and vegetable scraps inside that you can utilize as well. And so the main thing is with getting started is figuring out the materials, the organic materials that you have around your home that you're going to utilize in a backyard compost pile. So things like grass clippings, plant prunings, sticks, mulch, tree trimmings, all those things can be used in a pile. And then moving inside the house, you have your fruit and vegetable scraps, your coffee grounds, those could be utilized in a compost pile as well. And so when you go out and start to build this pile, you want to mix those materials all together and moisten them because the pile should always remain moist. A dried out compost pile is a compost pile that is not decomposing at all. So maintain moisture and then use a trusty fork or some other method to aerate that pile and keep air moving through the pile so it doesn't go anaerobic, which is a low oxygen condition that can create odors. And the last thing you want is to have a stinky compost pile and be known in your neighborhood as the person with the stinky compost pile. So make sure to aerate that pile, get those materials mixed up, keep them moist, and you're gonna have great success. Over time, it begins to shrink and the oxygen in the pile gets displaced and goes way down. And so that's when turning your compost pile or aerating it is crucial. Because if you do not go out there and reincorporate air into the pile, decomposition will slow down. So this is a garden digging fork, and this is what I use to go outside and aerate my compost piles. This here is a pitchfork, or also known as a hay fork, manure fork. It has lots of names. It's kind of infamous, if you will. If you notice, a pitchfork has a lot of it has a really curved angle to it, has curved long tines. And this is very difficult to use to turn a compost pile because it gets hung up on all the different materials and it can be a little frustrating. A digging fork, which has blocky, shorter, straight tines, is much easier to use to aerate your compost pile. So even though that's a real simple thing, it makes a big difference when you're going out to aerate your piles. Now, if you're wondering, how do I know exactly when to use this fork or some other way to aerate your pile? Well, you could potentially use a compost thermometer. And a compost thermometer is used to take the temperature of the pile over time. And if you pay attention to the temperature, as soon as it begins to drop, you go out and turn it. That will immediately bring air back into the pile, the microorganisms come back to life, and the temperatures go back up. So you could potentially not only use your hand and your eyes to judge the moisture content of a pile or whether the pile needs turning or not, you can also use good old compost thermometer. Plus, it's just fun. The master gardeners through the University of California have programs throughout the state in most counties, and they are an ongoing resource for you if you have further questions on composting.